situations of where it occurs in adults and in children. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the actual definition, which of course it is like therapy, where it's between a client and a therapist, and it's in group or in an individual setting. And then they use music, whether physical or auditory music, to work on relationships and learning and communication and the emotional and physical attributes that music can bring on. And so, for example, have y'all heard of The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks?
Yes.
Most of y'all. And so, you remember in the movie or in the book where she's sitting down at the piano and then she starts playing that song on the piano, and it's from memory, even though she has Alzheimer's? That's a form of music therapy. And so, and people don't usually view it as that way, but in the therapeutic world, it is. And so, what it does, and like the setting of the music therapy room usually consists of like a piano or sometimes like a guitar, and it can be anywhere almost, but typically it's usually like in a classroom setting. And there's also like percussion instruments where they're kind of free to roam and be able to use the instruments to their liking, whether they throw it across the room or they just start banging on it. And so either way, it's used to their advantage. And then there's two types of treatment approaches as well, which is one, improvisation, which once again, they can throw anything across the room or just start banging on it. And then the therapist will sit there and just start strumming along a tune to whatever they're actually feeling inside. And so it makes almost their emotions come out even more. Another way is communication, in which they actually talk about how the music, a certain song, like may have them feel. And so, and that can also bring on like several different problems that they're facing, whether it's bullies or abuse as a child. And so going into that, I'm going to talk about several different treatment approaches like in adults. And some of where music therapy is used is whether like you had a stroke or Alzheimer's or chronic pain, or even something whenever you were a child, like a mental disability or even abuse. And so the first situation I'm going to talk about, his name's Simon, and he's an adult and he suffered abuse as a child. And so what the music therapist tried to do first is improvisation. And so she would sit there and she would try to like strum along, and like he was very fluent in music as well, which is why he decided on music therapy. And so he sat there and like he would play along and she would strum along with him, and turns out she was kind of falling asleep. Not meaning to in the middle of the music therapy session, but she kind of felt like she was kind of like drifting in and out. And so by the second session, she was like, okay, this isn't working out. And so she was trying to think of what to do next. Well, it ended up that he had to do like verbal communication with her instead, and like why he was playing like such like depressing music, and it was from the abuse that he suffered from whenever he was a child. And so that made the emotions come out. And then the other person that I'm going to talk about as an adult was, her name's Joyce, and she had Alzheimer's disease in her later years. And her husband really wanted her to do music therapy because whenever she was younger, around the World War II era, she was actually a famous singer and a dancer. And that's what she studied. But she couldn't even remember that she was this famous singer and dancer, which was really sad. And so what she used was improv. And so she would sit at the piano and start singing, and then all of a sudden Joyce would come in with this beautiful like melodic voice, and like being able to harmonize with her and be able to express her emotions and start remembering things through that improvisation. And so, and then the next thing I'm going to talk about to you is children. And some of the different things that come in with the children is autism and, of course, mental disabilities and abuse. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is Paul, and he suffered through something called Angelman syndrome, which is a disability where his physical and cognitive, like, part of his brain was not working, and he was unable to speak as well for the rest of his life. So he's pretty much he's kind of like this child right here, where he's pretty much confined to a wheelchair and not being able to like interact too much, like on a regular basis with like normal people. And so what she did with Paul is that she did improv. And so, and what he was able to do is that even though he wasn't able to move much, he was able to like try to keep a beat onto a drum or a percussion instrument while she played along with it. And so it was really cool to read that story. And then the last person I'm going to talk about it's a little boy named Carl in about 3rd or 4th grade. And he was suffering well, he wasn't suffering from, but he kind of had like an immature aspect to him where like his brain was not quite caught up with the rest of the children. And so what he retreated back to is like a fantasy land where Harry Potter and wizards and all these different aspects of fantasy were alive in his head. And like he would go in and create stories with the music therapist, and the music therapist would like play along to like different things. Like he would say like, the witch is hunting me down, and she would like make up some sort of melody to go along with it, saying that this witch is hunting him down and like trying to catch him or whatnot. And so, but then it ended up being also verbal communication as well, saying not only did this witch like make him do it, but then also like a bully was present as well in his lifestyle that no one knew about. And so, and that was really cool to see how music was able to come alive in him and to be able to display like what the problems was. And so, and then of course I have a couple pictures up here to show like different styles of like of music therapy. This one over here is like a group therapy sort of thing, and so they would have different people like come in, and of course like they could also have like sheets of music and all of that. And then these two right here are probably individual sessions in which people, younger children mostly, with either mental or physical disability are having a hard time, and so they would come in and try to help them out. And then this one down here is actually after a surgery, which I personally believe is actually more of a group therapy session, because not only is she trying to soothe the patient, but it's actually soothing to the surgeons with them not fully realizing it. And so, but to summarize everything up, music therapy is such a growing aspect coming into our world. And so, and it's not only for the physical aspect, it's for the emotional and the mental aspect as well. And it's very helping and soothing to every human being, whether you know it or not. And so, and any questions?